Make it plain.
Make it plain.
M.I.P.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
God bless you. Get woke. Folks, MIP is now COVID-free, meaning free to all subscribers as we navigate this pandemic. We're thinking about everyone, and we've got to get through this together. So for a limited time, no fee to subscribe to Make It Plain on your favorite podcast app. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously there's not going to be enough or even too much discussion about the aftermath of the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, others, and they're bound to be even more. As we've been saying, we're not only in the midst of a pandemic, but we're in the midst of a police-demic, or an armed vigilante-demic, if you will. I want to talk about that and another effort, movement, organization working to address some of this. Organization is what we need. So we're happy to talk to organizers and mobilizers around this issue. My guest today was previously the campaign director of the Refund America project and worked as the Wall Street Accountability and Housing Justice campaigner at the Center for Popular Democracy. Even before that, he serves on the Advisory Council of Black Organizing for Leadership and Dignity, BOLD. He's a graduate of Swarthmore. Right now, though, he works with community organizations and labor unions on campaigns to go on offense against Wall Street to beat back their destruction of communities of color. And what does that have to do with all that we're seeing right now? We're gonna get into that with the co-executive director of the Action Center on Race and the Economy, ACRE, the co-executive director, Maurice BP-Weeks. Maurice, bless you, brother. Welcome to Make It Plain. How are you, man?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
First, let me ask you, are your family and loved ones healthy and safe in this pandemic?
Yes, thankfully, I'm blessed to say that my family is safe, and my sister is actually a doctor in Boston, and she's had to deal with a couple of COVID patients, but so far she's safe as well. So couldn't be more happy about that.
That's good to know. And you're in Detroit, correct?
I am, yes. I
want to just address that first. So in Detroit, we know, I mean, like all of our Black urban communities, all our Black communities for that matter, you know, it's been a bit harsh and disproportionate, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so I've lived in Detroit for a little while now, and I live in a neighborhood that is particularly elderly. Detroit in general is a very Black city and a very old city. And about a block away from me are a bunch of senior citizen homes. And we know that, you know, this virus impacts old folks and Black folks at a disproportionate level. So there was a little while where we were hearing ambulances pretty much nonstop, but it started to calm down a little bit. And you know, folks are taking this seriously, which I think is important.
So let me ask you this: the intersection of the pandemic and the police-demic, are there concerns in your community about the demonstrations? And even though we need the demonstrations, the risk of exposure to COVID while we're out in these streets? Is there just anybody concerned or talking about that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think most of the activists who are going out are even concerned about it. And, you know, there's been a lot of focus on making sure people have masks. And if you see somebody at the protest without a mask, making sure that they put one on. And obviously the social distancing can't really be enforced too much at a march. But, you know, for me, when I think about it, it just shows how passionate people are, that, you know, we know how dangerous this virus is, and the need for change is so great that all of these people are actually willing to sacrifice their health to make sure that we get the change that we need. So, you know, in some ways it's really inspiring to me to see so many people coming out to these actions and marches.
And I'll be honest with you, Maurice, I think white folks especially should do that. I think
absolutely, yeah.
it's going to take some of them, and I've said this, it's going to take some of them putting their bodies in between the police and us. I mean, if you really give a damn about us, that's ultimately, unfortunately, what it's going to have to take. I mean, they're going to have to learn the Kingian principles of nonviolent confrontation quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at this country and, all the anti-Blackness that's in the history, we know that, one of the ways that people can really be a good ally, which I like co-conspirator a little bit more than ally because it shows that you're really at my side. But, one of the ways to be a good ally is really doing exactly what you're saying, just like, putting yourself on the line as well. And it's just a little taste of what we have to go through every single day. I don't really have a choice of whether I'm on the front lines with the police or not. So yeah, I think you're totally right.
Tell us a little bit about, first of all, the ACRE, the Action Center for Race and the Economy, and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're what you call a campaign organization. So, I came up as a community organizer. For example, I worked during the last housing crisis with Black and brown families that were losing their homes, getting them to fight back against banks when they were losing their homes illegally for the most part. So now we do work that supports those types of organizations through, strategy to help them run better campaigns or community building efforts, as well as research, and then just pulling things together at a national level. So that's a little bit about what we do, and we're laser focused on making sure that racial justice is at the center of everything that we're doing. So we're not interested in race blind economic justice solutions, because we know that doesn't get you very far in this country and all the problems that we have. So yeah, that's a little bit about ACRE.
Tell us, you all, the lane that you're all kind of operating in this police-demic right now.
Yeah. It's funny, right before all of these uprisings launched again, we were in a lane about to talk about how communities of color, specifically Black communities, were about to get cut during the recession. Now it's that on top of the fact that we're in a situation where police budgets across the country take up such a significant proportion of budgets that folks are going to feel those cuts on top of the police-demic that you're saying, on top of all the police violence that's in their communities. So we're doing a tremendous amount of research and support of folks on the ground to help them understand sort of how the budget system works, the ways that it's designed to extract money from Black folks, and the ways that police basically get whatever they want in a budgeting process and have bloated budgets. And then most importantly, what can we do about that? What are some strategies? What are our demands to make sure that we change the way that budgets look in this country?
And obviously there's conversations about budgets, and from budget reform for police all the way to defunding.
That's right.
Can you give us a little bit more of a glimpse, especially, and this is where the pandemic and the police-demic probably intersect, about how budget cuts and whatnot are impacting those who are victims of COVID or those who are susceptible to COVID.
Yeah.
And yet the police, I mean, we haven't heard any stories about the police budget being affected by COVID. So help me.
That's totally right. I mean, we can go back to the last recession where you can name the department in your city or state and it was cut by a certain percentage. And right. The department that didn't get cut by the same percentage is almost always the police. So the police almost never get cut by as much. If they get cut at all, it's never as much as anything else. So when you put on top of that a public health crisis, and think about the things that are getting cut right now, things like public transportation or transportation for the elderly or disabled, things that people need to get actually to the doctor, other health services, other like community infrastructure that gets people clean water, et cetera, et cetera. Put that on top of a pandemic that spread so virally, you really have an enormous problem. And you're right, the police, talking about cutting police budgets seems to never be on the table, but luckily with the campaigns that folks are running around defunding the police, it is coming back to the forefront.
So I'm gonna do something right now. Tell me if you thought of this before I did. because I'm looking at one of your campaigns, right? Defund the police, refund America.
That's right.
The Refund America project. Did you think of that before I did?
It has been popping into my mind a lot these past few days. Yeah, we launched Refund to talk about, all of the money that's extracted out of Black America in lots of different ways. And this is exactly one of the ways, right? So if we defund the police, we're not just saying cut their budgets by 10%. That money actually can go to services that really affect folks like us. So yeah, that's definitely a connection.
People understand what services, Maurice.
Yeah. So, pick your city that you're in, you almost definitely have seen cuts to things like libraries or your roads infrastructure. I know here in Detroit, I get a flat tire once every 6 months because our roads are so bad. Or our parks or our schools. So things like, when you come to a city that is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the police, sometimes up to 65% of their city's budget on the police, you can just start to imagine how much better our schools would look if some of that money went towards the schools. The police are almost always the largest budget item for a municipality. So, any service that is provided by the public, we could be funding at a level that's actually adequate. And we could be providing way more services too. I know one thing that folks are especially folks who are essential workers are struggling with in this moment is childcare. Well, wouldn't it be great if, childcare workers were paid fairly and the state helped fund that? We can't do that if we have these bloated police budgets the way that they are. So, there's sort of a myriad of things that you could imagine funding if you were able to cut some of these funds.
So yeah, I think you ought to work that one, brother. Defund the police, refund America. I think you ought to work with that one, doctor. That flows.
All right. If you see it on a poster now, I'll give you credit. I'll give you tagline.
You don't even do that, man. I don't even ask for that. That's yours. I'm giving that one to you. Y'all need to work that. And I'll be honest with you, Maurice. Some people are confused about defund.
Yeah.
They don't know that. So to be honest with you, our community is kind of split on that, because some people don't. They just hear defund, but they just see some people saying, well, let's just get rid of the police. But they don't see where that money could be going on the front end to negate some of the things the police do in the first place.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think you got to do that, man.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and when you look at the things that, I think you're absolutely right that, for a lot of us, I know I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and one of my first interactions with the government at all, one of the only interactions that I had when I was growing up there was with the police, right? Like that's the service that you have a front line view of.
Right.
And a lot of our communities are, there are problems that we wish that there was someone that we could call to solve them. And for right now, the police are it. So when you hear we're going to totally defund the police, that worries some in our community. I think that's something we need to be real about.
Right.
And also, looking at the images from some of the cities that have had uprisings in the past, not just the past few months, but the past years, really. And you see multiple tanks on the street. You see officers dressed up like they're in the middle of Baghdad. You see helicopters flying over the city 24/7. These are things that cost tens of millions of dollars. And I don't think that you could find a lot of people that would say ahead of time, yeah, we need a tank for Detroit. The police should own a bomb-proof tank.
Right.
And then even if you think of some of the services that the police are supposed to offer, they often don't do those very well. So, I talk to my sisters who have been victims of various types of assault and sexual assault. The police are horrible at solving those crimes, right? That's one of the things you always hear about. If we reduce the number of police, well, what about sexual assault victims? They have a horrible record in solving sexual assaults.
Don't matter. Yeah. They do nothing. Right.
So what we need is to invest in systems that, like you're saying, on the front end, stop these problems from happening. So that when we, we're not talking about turning our communities into war zones. We're talking about actually solving that by funding the programs that matter.
Well, and I give you another good example, I think, and our people do this too often. Black folk. There's a relative in the home with mental health issues, and then when that person is going through whatever type of episode of downfall, call the police.
That's right.
And then the police show up and kill that person.
That's right.
That
That's
happens. And I'll be honest with you, that doesn't just happen in our community. That happens to white folks. It happens to Native Americans, brown people. See, so if you're taking that money, why doesn't something, there ought to be something else we can call. Right? I mean,
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I mean, like when you
kill my child, well, why you call the police?
Right. I mean, I understand when people do that because, you know, those situations are often us as just individual family members aren't equipped to deal with that, you know, but there are professions that are equipped to deal with that. Let's fund those to make sure that like in an emergency, there's someone to call. I think the same thing is true of, you know, if a fire happens, whenever the firefighters show up, the police show up too. So, you know, and they'll often make an arrest of something that is really, really petty or small. And, you know, you were just calling to put the fire out. And now somebody who lives in the house is under arrest. It's totally unnecessary. There are ways that we can fix that. And, you know, defunding the police is the first step.
Domestic disputes, especially when they don't involve violence or extreme violence, the police don't do nothing. I mean, they arrest somebody and then they go to jail and then that person comes back house next day. So what is that? But the other thing too, and I think this is where the challenge comes in, and I think that's where I recommend the work you offer makes a difference, because there's still in our community, it's a double-edged sword. The police kill us, but they also allow us to be killed. You know, you remind people of the song 911 is a joke. So when something does happen, when we need police service or law enforcement, no, we don't care about that. You know, it's like nothing happens. I'm not going to solve, like you brought up sexual assault. In a Me Too era, they don't do nothing. If someone looks like you and me, the same person, all right, and commits a crime against one of us, forget about it.
Yeah, I think people will watch police television shows and get this idea that, you know, every cop is tracking down clues and talking to 10 witnesses, and you know, they've got a board in their office connecting people, and that is not how it works, especially for our community. So, you know, we've heard from police in several cities, they don't come unless there's a gun at the scene, and sometimes they don't come then either. So, you know, that's not really the service that they advertise, and there are just other ways to solve our community's problems than to throwing lots of money into a militarized police force.
Right. And you talked about the militarism. We're men, and I say to people all the time, you see, men have to speak about men in the context that we know each other. Those are toys. They are phallic. You know, let's just be honest. And that which says a whole nother thing. You're already on the police department, you got a badge and a gun, but your self-esteem still requires a military toy. So then we got to even talk about what type of mental health evaluation is going on with officers who still are not fulfilled enough in their own self-esteem and manhood that they got to ride around town in tanks and do all that kind of stuff. So that's another thing. The Refund America project, I mean, we're also talking about lingering effects of the recession and the housing crisis. I mean, we don't talk about that anymore, but people are still not fully made whole from either of those experiences, correct?
Oh, I mean, absolutely right. And it's one of the things that I think keeps me up at night as someone who thinks a lot about housing in particular in this country. You know, in the month of April and May, there were close to between a third and half of the people in the country didn't pay rent. Yeah. We know that our folks are more likely to not pay rent or to be renters than other folks. So that's a lot of Black folks who didn't pay rent. Now, there is an eviction moratorium in a lot of places, and one at the national level too. Those are all expiring soon. So, you know, I'm just fast forwarding a couple of months to a situation where, you know, folks still maybe won't be at work, or maybe there's no work for them to return to now based on the crisis, and they still can't pay their rent. That $1,200 with the president's name on it is long gone. And, you know, what's going to happen? Evictions are going to happen. And we might see a situation where just millions and millions of people are put out literally onto the streets amidst a pandemic that will still be spreading. So yeah, that's something that I think about constantly. And again, when we talk about things like defunding the police, there are ways to deal with all of those problems that I just laid out. If states were able to give folks to cancel rent for folks for this period where they can't find a job, then we wouldn't have to worry about an upcoming huge eviction crisis. But we're about to worry about a huge upcoming eviction crisis. So
supposedly the greatest, richest country in the world.
That's right.
All these other countries, man, it wasn't even a news story. It was just automatic. Okay, bills are paid.
Absolutely.
In places where you got leaders that look like Donald Trump, like Boris or whatever his name is.
Mm-hmm.
What's
yeah.
Boris?
Yeah, Boris Johnson.
He's Donald Trump in the mirror, mini Trump, mini me. And still, it was like, there was no national debate about whether or not we're going to pay people's bills. It was just like almost automatic.
Yeah, yeah.
But it happened before people even knew it. I mean, it was just nothing stopped. And we can't do that here. And see, what you're saying is also, because think about this. See, this is self-contradictory. Let me just run this by you. You evict people in the middle of a pandemic, which raises the number of homeless people. And then there are those who argue that homelessness helps to spread the disease. That's
absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. So, I mean, in this scenario, this is why I said it keeps me up at night, right? So in this scenario where, it's so clear that homelessness helps to spread the disease that several people tried to, they took over hotels and a couple of cities did and put homeless folks in there just to try and tamp down the spread. So, imagine a scenario where that's impossible, a scale in which that's impossible. So the millions and millions of people who didn't pay their rent all are going through eviction processes.
Yeah.
I just can't, I really, it does keep me up at night worrying about what that will mean for our public health, let alone all of those families that it will destroy.
Yeah. Yeah. So folks, the great work that the Action Center on Race and the Economy is doing, we want you to get involved. Folks where can people go? Give us the website where people can go to find out more.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to our website, which is acrecampaigns.org. So ACRE campaigns with an S.org. And you can see ways to get in touch with us and also campaigns that we're working on. And as always, the Movement for Black Lives website has a ton of information, both on the movement's response to this, to the uprisings, as well as COVID-19 and lots of other stuff.
I like this other tab on the website, Pop Ed. That's cool.
That's right. Yeah. If you can't inform the public about things that are going on, then the work isn't important. So yeah, that's a really important part of the stuff that we do as well.
So I'll trade you Defund the Police, Refund America for Pop Ed. I want to use it.
All right. That's a good deal.
Just curious, how much of you're right there in Detroit. Is the work you're doing and the demands for change that you're advocating, are they being heard or taking hold right there in your own backyard?
I think it's a mix. I think there are a lot of people who are echoing the demands for both things around the coronavirus, as well as the recession that we're in, as well as the uprisings that were going on. And Michigan's an interesting place. You got Detroit, which is the blackest city in the country, but we have a lot of suburbs around here that you will find the hardest of hardcore Donald Trump supporters. And so much happens on the statewide level that we're really handcuffed here at the local level. So and I know that's true in a lot of different states. So it's a real mix. It's a real mix of what's going on here.
Yeah. ACREcampaigns.org, folks. And as far as I'm concerned, our brother Maurice BP-Weeks and the work that he's doing is critical in this conversation at this point. But before I forget, one other thing. So in terms of the rent cancellations and whatnot, do we have a sense of, and I know that's first on your page, how many places where this is not available that we need to target? Is there any way of kind of keeping up with that, or is it kind of a catch as catch can kind of a thing?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would say, nearly everywhere so far hasn't taken the sufficient steps to stop an eviction crisis from upcoming. So another website that I'll recommend for folks to just keep in mind is homesguarantee.com, and those folks have been doing a lot of work to make sure that people can remain housed during this time and always, and are going to be crucial in what is going to really be huge fights. But, if the police are coming and trying to drag people out of their apartments across the country, they're going to be huge. You talk about uprisings, there's going to be huge fights. So there's lots of work that's upcoming to do as those eviction moratoriums expire in the next couple of months.
And I know there's conversations some communities are already having, or at least planning, rent strikes, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people on rent strike, even more on involuntary rent strike that we call it, just because they have no income right now. So there's going to be a lot of political action coming up, and lots of ways to engage for anyone who's looking to do that.
Lastly, what is Wall Street's culpability in the pandemic and or the police-demic specifically?
Yeah, one of the first things that I will tell people, as an economist, is to follow the money, and then you can find where the evil is. So if you look at all the struggle that's happening in our communities, it's really, really dire. And then if you look at the stock market, just take a look at the S&P 50 or S&P 100 or S&P 500. They're up higher than they were before the pandemic, right? So they're still making money. They've already figured out ways to make even more money during this. So we need to stop. It's because that they are extractive by nature, and they're quickly adaptable. So whenever there's a crisis like this, they figure out a way to pounce on it fast. That's why it's important to never take your eyes off of them, so you can keep track of them picking our back pockets here, which is what's going on.
Yeah. Amazing. Maurice BP-Weeks, folks. Don't forget, go to ACREcampaigns.org. That's ACREcampaigns.org for the Action Center on Race and the Economy. Maurice, pleasure to meet you, brother. Appreciate the work you're doing. It's very important work. And I mean, the hour this is the moment where traditional same old leadership is going out the window. And we need to hear more from brothers like you and organizations like yours. We need a fresh infusion of energy, ideas, and activism, if not youth. I say that at my own peril because I'm not that young anymore. But that's what we need. And so I appreciate what you're doing, brother. And anything that I can do or this broadcast can do to help promote the very important work that ACRE is doing, don't hesitate to ask. If I don't reach out to you, reach out to me, and I'm at your service. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's my pleasure. We'll be in touch.
All right. Maurice BP-Weeks, folks. Don't forget, go to ACREcampaigns.org. Get educated, get organized, get mobilized.
God, you are our refuge. Send our ancestors to guard our doors. Cast out this virus from our communities and our bodies. Heal, bless, and protect everyone listening and their loved ones. Thank you for listening to Make It Plain and Get Woke. Remember to listen, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.